The Legate is a Tier 8 premium Italian cruiser, and potentially the most toxic ship debuting in World of Warships Legends during the May 2026 update. I think you'll see what I mean as this battle goes on, but what we have here is essentially a copy-paste of the Tier 8 Michelangelo, albeit with some major differences that I'll get into in a little bit. Before we get started on anything, though, I'll show you the commander build. It's Paolo di Revel, obviously a battleship commander, one geared towards secondaries, because with this being a copy-paste of the Michelangelo, the secondaries, more so than the main battery guns, are, I suppose, the main armament here. And unlike the Colonna yesterday, I found that this ship performs just fine with Revel at the helm. We've got him set up with Hipper and Haruna for a full secondary build. We do also have the enhanced secondary targeting consumable 2 on this vessel, which, like the Colonna, may or may not be working as intended. I'm not 100% sure, but at least with this ship, I didn't feel like there were too many issues with the accuracy. And I suppose as we get started here, we should cover what makes this totally different than the Michelangelo. And that really just has to do with the secondaries. What we have here are essentially the same number, same size of secondaries as the Michelangelo. There are 20 90mm secondaries. And then, on top of that, there are 12 152mm secondaries. Same as the Michelangelo, the main difference being that the secondaries on the Legate shoot only HE, no SAP. And that, in some ways, I suppose, makes them a little bit better than the Michelangelo, because with HE secondaries, you don't really have the concern that if the HE can pen the armor surface the shells are hitting, that they're going to ricochet or shatter. They're just going to pen. They're going to follow the HE penetration rules, and as such, they may be able to get a little bit more damage in situations where SAP could not, namely against angled targets. And then on top of that, being HE, they can start fires, and boy do they ever. We're going to get a Witherer in this battle. This was the very first battle I played in the Legate, and I don't think this is the only Witherer I've gotten in this thing. In fact, this thing might be a Witherer printing factory. Secondaries are in action now against the Schlieffen, so you'll get to get a small taste of them in this sequence. But these 90mm and 152mm secondaries range out to 10.7 kilometers with the full build. That's including Hipper, Haruna, the secondary module, Porcupine, etc. In comparison, Michelangelo with the same build can only achieve a range of 10.3. So we have a few tenths of a kilometer more range on these secondaries. As for the small ones, the HE does a maximum of 1400 with a 5% fire chance, and you'd think, being 90mm secondaries, that maybe they wouldn't actually pen anything. But they do. They get special penetration rules. They pen 25mm, which is more than quarter pen, I think, that you get on German HE, for example. It's not enough to pen the hulls of battleships, let's say, but certainly their superstructure. Cruisers, destroyers as well. No problem for the 90mm secondaries on the Legate. The 152s, as you might imagine, do more HE damage, 1700. They have an 8% fire chance, and they pen 38mm of armor, which is a nice coincidence considering the Montana out there. He's outside of our secondary range right now, but he won't be forever. And he, being an American battleship, has 38mm deck plating. These large secondaries can pen that, and they can pen his hull pretty much everywhere, except for, of course, the turret armor and the belt armor. But other than that, they can do a lot of damage and light a lot of fires. That's definitely the main calling card of this ship. That's the main thing that separates it from the Michelangelo. The HP is exactly the same. 66,100, which is more than some battleships, actually, at the tier. And the armor schemes are also, likewise, identical. The Legate has a really large, overmatchable bow and stern plate. It's 25mm, so of course you need to be careful. You can't really Go bow on to something like the Montana or stern on, you'll just get overmatched. But the belt armor is 40 millimeters. The lower belt at the waterline is a little thicker than that, and so is the deck, also 40 millimeters. Very heavily armored in the center of the ship, more than capable of bouncing battleship shells from any battleship you're going to encounter at Tier 8 or Legendary Tier, and there's barely any superstructure to speak of. So if you keep this thing angled properly and you position it right, it is very tanky and very hard to take out. It's only got 28% torpedo damage reduction, though, so you probably don't want to get hit by any of those. As for the main battery, which you've seen us shoot now a few times, we've got HE chambered, HE and AP, although there is a 5th module slot on the Legate, which is optional. You can put a mod in there that switches out the HE for SAP. Although I haven't really seen a reason to do that. Why carry SAP on the main battery guns instead of HE when all of your secondaries are HE? Use the main battery gun HE to light fires and follow up those fires with the secondaries or vice versa. I think that's probably the best way to build the thing. These guns range out to 15.4 kilometers, which I think is a little... Well, actually, I think it's the same as the Michelangelo. They reload in 21.5 seconds because, of course, they are larger guns. There are 2 quadruple turrets of 320 millimeter guns. Of course, they're in the center of the ship. The secondaries are in the place where you'd probably find the main battery guns on most ships. And that means it cannot, like the Michelangelo, fire completely forward or completely backward. You have to give quite a bit of broadside to get all of the guns on target. The maximum HE shell damage is 4,700, and they have a 35% fire chance. They pen 55 millimeters. And then it has AP, of course. It does a maximum damage of 9,700. No improved pen angles or anything. But it does have pretty good pen. The armor penetration at point blank range is 707.5 millimeters, and even at maximum range, the 15.4 kilometers, it falls off to 331.2. That's enough pen, I would say, to get through at least the upper belt armor of a lot of battleships, and certainly Citadel them at closer ranges. You would need to be careful if you're giving this thing broadside. If only we had the AP loaded here against this broadside Montana. But don't worry, the secondaries will begin to do their work. I don't know why he shoots HE back at us, by the way. That probably wasn't a great idea. Not a lot of damage for him there, but he's going to switch to AP. Don't worry, it's going to hurt a little bit more when he does. We also have torpedoes, much like the Michelangelo, and these things are the same. There are 2 triple launchers on either side of the ship, sort of in the back. So I think you have to give, a fair amount of angle to get them firing forward, but they range out to 8 kilometers. They go at 72 knots, they reload in 120 seconds, and they do a maximum simulated damage of 20,138. So, much like the Michelangelo, they hurt. You don't want to get hit by one of these torpedoes at all. And I suppose we should talk about the consumables since we're using the exhaust smoke. This thing comes with 2 exhaust smoke generators base, and they last for 40 seconds each. They cool down in 150 seconds. Not the longest Italian smoke screen out there, but certainly enough to allow you to reposition or turn away and start kiting instead of pushing into a Montana like this. The game is, at this point, a 4v3 in favor of the Blues, but it could easily go either way. The tide does turn quickly in World of Warships Legends. As for the rest of the consumables, we have a repair party, which can be exchanged for a sonar or DFAA. I have no idea why you would ever willingly give up a repair party for sonar or a DFAA, but if you want to, you can. The HP restored per second is 428, and the consumable duration for the heal is 28 seconds. And then, of course, we talked about the enhanced secondary targeting consumable too. It's supposed to reduce the secondary battery reload time by 25%, buff Sigma by 200%, and then reduce the dispersion by 70%. Whether it is functioning right on this ship or the Kelowna, I don't know, but again, I don't think there's any problems with the accuracy on these secondaries. 201 hits thus far, and by the way, Montana is only on a sliver of health. The fire chance on these main battery guns is pretty reliable, and we've got an enemy Legate in front of us broadside, so switch to the AP. There's the fire on Montana. I didn't realize it at this point, but that fire is lethal, and it's going to send him back to port. There's the Witherer with the lovely animation you get for the medals on Steam. Please, Wargaming, put this on the console version of the game. AP, you'll get a taste of this against the Legate. Of course, like the Michelangelo, the Citadel is exposed, very easily hittable, and so we do against the enemy Legate. There's the high caliber medal, 166,000 damage. And moving on with the rest of the specs, the maneuverability is pretty good on this thing. 33.5 knot speed as we get the Arsonist medal on the Montana. And we also got the Witherer, by the way. 830 meter turning circle, pretty big for a cruiser, but I think it's maneuverable enough. I don't really see any problems with it. Rudder shift is really good at 10.8 seconds. Well, really good. I suppose that's relative. I'd say that 10.8 second rudder shift is good for a massive super cruiser like this. Concealment, worse than Michelangelo. 11.3 kilometers with the concealment mod. For comparison's sake, the Michelangelo can achieve a concealment of 10.6, but it has less range on the secondaries, only 10.3. I think those are pretty much the major differences between the two, aside from the fact that the secondaries here only shoot HE and not SAP. But as this battle winds down, there's only one destroyer left alive. He could theoretically win this battle. I think the main thing he could do is get into this cap and flip it, which is why we're not immediately exiting the cap. We have a vague idea of his last known position. You can see his grayed out location on the minimap near Alpha, and we think he's probably coming in the direction of the left-hand side of the screen. So we just kind of want to park by this island because we know he's behind it, and if he comes out and spots us and tries to enter the cap, good chance we're going to spot him and he's going to be toast. But I think we need to talk about how we get the ship while we're waiting for the battle to end, because that is unfortunate. There's a random bundle in the store. It's called Mare Nostrum, which I think in Latin means RC. I don't know. Anyway, it is a 60 set bundle, each set costing 1,000 doubloons, and there are 4 ships, or rather 3 ships available. No, 4 of them in the set. Ferruccio is one. It happened to be in the very first set for me, so I did actually buy it, and it compensated me with 2,000 doubloons, which is why I did that. But you've got Ferruccio as a possibility, you've got Roma, you've got Centurion, and then finally you have Legate. And again, this is a 60 set bundle with each set costing 1,000 doubloons. So it's possible you could get the Legate for as low as 1,000 doubloons if you get ultra lucky and find it in the first set of the bundle. If that's the case, I think it's a no-brainer to pay 1,000 doubloons to get this thing. No problem at all. It's definitely worth it. However, the only way to guarantee that you will actually obtain the ship is by spending 60,000 doubloons on the whole set. Now, of course, you could go one by one until you get it, but you could very easily have it end up near the end and spend well over the price of any equivalent Tier 8. For that reason, I don't think I can recommend it at all. I really don't like the random bundles. If they have to do that, it would be nice if they would just put the ship on sale in the store for a flat doubloon price, so that you don't have to spend more doubloons than you want to in the hopes of obtaining 1 out of 60 sets in a random bundled chain like this. And also in the past, the random bundle chains have been cheaper at 750 doubloons each. This price increase to 1,000, it's pretty significant. So I don't like these random bundles. I don't like the fact that the ship is only obtainable from them. At the same time, I think this thing is toxic. I mean, we have 180,000 damage done here With a number of fires, the Witherer, the Arsonist, the high caliber metal, this thing is capable of pumping out the damage, and I don't think you want to find yourself in a position where you're trying to brawl with it, especially when it's being played well, angled inside of a smoke screen. It's going to melt you with these HE secondaries, not only through the penetration that these have, which is improved over conventional HE shells, but also the fires. I think for that reason, it's potentially even more toxic than the Michelangelo. There's not going to be any angling for the gearing, for example, against these secondaries. He might be able to bounce the 90mm sap on the Michelangelo. Not so here. And of course, the gearing's got no chance to win. We don't end up sinking him, but we do end with the Dreadnought medal because, much like the Michelangelo, this thing is also a bit of a tank. And I think it's perhaps a little toxic, maybe even a little bit overtuned. It's certainly a fun ship to play. It's just unfortunate that the only way to get it is through this bundle chain. So for that reason, I can't recommend it, even though it is toxic. And frankly, I do find it pretty fun to play alongside the Michelangelo. So hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.